Hello guys, welcome back. Lunatic Astrology here, your astrologer Lori Lothian, and today we're talking about the lunar eclipse on June the 5th at about 3 in the afternoon, 3:13 to be precise, Eastern Standard Time. Adjust for your time zone. Now this eclipse is going to play out big on the world stage, and I want to talk about that contextually to the tensions going on, particularly in the United States, around which the whole world has galvanized itself, which is of course the issues around police brutality and unfair treatment of people of color. And I also want to talk a little bit about each of your signs and how this eclipse is going to play out. Ideally, you know your rising or ascendant sign, but you can apply this information as well to your sun and moon sign. This is the first eclipse in the Gemini Sagittarius axis of the chart that's going to happen over the next year and a half. So it's also got special significance as being the inaugural energy. And even though it's a subtle eclipse, even though it's it's not so close to the nodal axis that it's going to look like an eclipse for most people in the world, like you won't see a lunar, you won't see during this full moon, the eclipsing of the moon, it still is quite significant, especially given the aspect it makes to Mars, the Sabian symbols around it, and the connection of Neptune during this eclipse. So before I explain all of that to you, a couple of orders of business. If you like my channel, like, subscribe, and comment, because that's how I grow the channel. So I would appreciate that. Thank you so much. Second of all, I do have a couple of sale items still on my website right now. I extended my pandemic special of my year ahead reading 40% off. It's only $135. People have asked me to extend it, so I did. It's been on for 2 months, and I so enjoyed helping people during this time, and I've met so many amazing people during the sale. I'm delighted with what it has accomplished, because as an astrologer, I love meeting new clients. Second of all, I have a Venus special on. Venus is retrograde right now, and she's creating a kind of new momentum in your life for the next 4 years, depending on where she falls in your chart. And that's because of her new star point in Gemini. Check that out. It's only $75. The links are below. And lastly, but not leastly, I created an eclipse reading that talks about how these eclipses going through Gemini and Sagittarius will impact your life over the next 2 years and make changes to some area of your life. When the eclipses went through my first and seventh house axis in 2015, 16, 17, it was the end of an 8-year marriage. And these eclipses, when they move through very intense places like the marriage house, which it did for me, can really bring about changes that are fated and destined for our highest good. These new eclipses in Gemini Sag could be changing up your career, your home, your relationships, your finances. So it's worth knowing where these changes will happen. So check out the eclipse special reading that I created in the description box below. Alrighty, now back to business. Guys, this eclipse is so intense, and I please forward to each sign if you're bored with the mundane or general interpretation. But this is an eclipse that can bring inspiration and opportunity, but also through the crucible of a T-square. So that red square that you're seeing, I got to get this right, wait, that way, no, that way. Hang on, I can do this. There, that triangle, that red triangle, I should say, is called a T-square. It can create greatness. You know that expression, the oyster creates the pearl from the grid of discontent. It's a classic T-square energy. Greatness is embedded in the tension of this square. And the tension, when it's resolved, does create something quite great. And I'm optimistic about what it may create for the collective. Let's talk about this as if we're looking at what is called the axis of the world, the thema mundi. And I'm going to pretend that our ascendant sign is Cancer, because in the thema mundi, or the world chart, like a chart for the world, Cancer is the rising sign. And so therefore Capricorn is the descendant sign, okay? And the reason, and Aries is in the 10th house, that kind of thing. Libra is in the 4th. So it's a different chart instead of Aries anchoring the 1st house. And I want to talk about what this eclipse means in terms of pretending that we're looking at the world chart, the chart of the world itself. And oh, your kids playing outside. Do you hear that? And what's really cool about a world chart angle and looking at this T-square on this eclipse, which is a full moon, by the way, always, all eclipses are full moons. I mean, it's happening at 15 degrees Sagittarius. That's where the moon is. And obviously the sun's at 15 degrees across the way in Gemini. The world axis chart means that the actual eclipse itself, the lunar eclipse, is happening in the natal 6th house of the world. And the 6th house is the house of bad fortune. It is considered one of the more challenging houses. It's ruled by Mars, or Mars finds his joy in the 6th house. And so the world is going through a time in which this lunar eclipse on the south node of the nodal axis, which is about what we need to let go of, what we need to surrender into, what we need to release. All right. This is happening in what is considered the health of the world, because the 6th house is about sickness, and it's about Mars having his joy there. Mars likes war, battle, conflict, riots, killing, homicide. This is very Mars stuff. And Mars is mischiefy there. He loves the 6th house, the house of bad fortune. And it's the house of sickness. It's also the house of one's karmic debt. It's the world's karmic debt. And so with the eclipse happening in the house of the sickness of the world, where Mars is running amok, we have a clue here that something important is trying to happen. Something is trying to be healed with this eclipse. And all of the eclipses over the next year and a half are going to happen in the axis that will involve that 6th house of the world itself and the 12th house of the world itself. And this is a very karmic and spiritual axis of the world chart for the world, the place we live, the matrix, the simulation, whatever you want to call it. These eclipses are trying to profoundly heal how we do 12th house things, self-undoing as a collective on this planet or in this matrix or in this simulation, and how we get sick in the 6th house and how we can get better by finding means to heal. So this is kind of a theme for the world, and this first eclipse is showing us some of its stark nature with what's going on with the riots, for instance, in the United States of America, but which has captivated the whole world. Now, first of all, if we take the idea that the eclipse is in the house of sickness and karmic debt and difficulty and bad fortune for the world, then where is this T-square coming from? Where Mars is in the sign of Pisces, creating a square or difficult angle. And that is coming out of the world's 9th house. And the 9th house is religion and philosophy and justice and fairness and ideals. And did I say philosophy? Idealism. So Mars is coming from that place in the chart, and he's acting very much like somebody who's trying to be, a philosophical warrior. Black Lives Matter. The meme is going crazy again, which is wonderful. And we're having deep and profound discussions online about what it means to experience the lack of white privilege that we take for granted. It's a privilege I didn't earn because my skin is white. Someone made a comment that I loved. You can't buy a Band-Aid that's not a skin tone of a white person. That's white privilege. That was Brene Brown, I think. And so I really want you guys to think about the idea that in this particular eclipse that's happening in the 9th house, which is, in the 6th house, it is Mars in the 9th house of fairness and justice and truth and wisdom. And all of that is trying to do some kind of rectification. So even though it's a square to the eclipse, which is a pressure angle, it's trying to help out. A square to the sun, which is a pressure angle, is trying to help out. It's trying to change the karmic debt and the karmic illness and the situation this world has found itself in. Now, here's something that's really, really cool. The Sabian symbol for the moon is seagulls watching a ship. And that's about opportunity. You're hovering above some kind of bounty that you can get, and you have to pounce on it when it's the right time. The Sabian symbol for Mars, which is squaring this moon, is the flow of inspiration. And it's considered to be a very powerful Sabian symbol around visionary and ideals and magic and stuff like that, the flow of inspiration. So we have some opportunity, if we're careful to catch it, and some inspiration collectively coming our way. And I'm excited by those Sabian symbols. Now, here's the interesting part. You can see, oh, I didn't put Neptune in there. Sorry, but Neptune is right beside Mars, okay? There's Mars. Neptune is right there, 20 degrees, 5 degrees off of Mars. And on June 13th, Mars will meet Neptune in the sky. So pay attention to June 13th, give or take a day, because what this eclipse does for the world, it will actualize some greater output or greater outpicturing of it around the June 13th date. And don't forget, opportunity, flow of inspiration and opportunity are key words here. What happens when Mars is conjunct Neptune? You have kind of like a spiritual warrior, but you also have idealism, paranoia, delusion. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Bill Clinton was born with Neptune conjunct Mars. And oh yes, scandal. Scandal is one of the things that Neptune and Mars can do. We could have a scandal arise, quite a big one, where some secrets or weird stuff that's been foggy and we're not clear about gets finally cleared up. You know, as Bill said, I didn't have sex with that woman. Yeah, well, what do you call sex, you know? Oral sex is sex. So we get this kind of like energy around maybe cover up with Neptune and Mars busting through that around the 13th and clarity. And we still have a pandemic worldwide. So that cover up and that clarity could also be about the pandemic and some new breakthrough of insight or knowledge about what's really going on. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I'm not going there. I'm just talking about even understanding the virus better, or knowing, maybe people know more about it in the medical community that we're actually not getting news of yet. And it'll all become more clear later on, especially around June 13th. Now, I said Bill Clinton, Charles Manson, the mass murderer, you know, that in the 60s, who basically, you know, had that, you know, compelling, magnetic, charismatic quality about him, that he could pull the wool over people's eyes. Well, that's that Mars Neptune. And, you know, so we see that kind of delusion, illusion, compulsion, more like an ability to seduce and be charismatic in a way that is, you know, destructive, death-like energies, you know, with the paranoia as well, with that combination. And then here's the good news. Now, this is exciting to me. There's a poet from the 1700s to the early 1800s, Percy Bysshe Shelley. And he was very much almost like, you know, a revolutionary. He had visions of a utopian ideal society. And he wrote a poem that was called The Daemon, or The Demon of the World. I'm going to say Daemon, it's D-E-M. And it was first called Queen Mab. Now, this was one of those poems, I had to tell you guys about it, because Neptune conjunct Mars was what Percy Bysshe Shelley was born with. And we're seeing this Neptune conjunct Mars energy coming into play. So his poem, The Daemon of the World, which was only really made popular and published posthumously, it is about a perfect society that cannot be attained immediately through violent revolution. And instead, it was to be achieved through nature's evolution and ever greater numbers of people becoming virtuous and imagining a better society. And it was a very utopian poem. And it really brought the idea to bear that we could create a utopia on planet Earth. I printed out more about the poem, but I lost my printout. So at some point during the reading about what this poem was about, the idea I got was it was a fairy tale, and it was a little bit like this fairy, Queen Mab, comes to somebody and takes them to past, present, and future and shows them the way the world could be instead of a conflict-ridden, strife-ridden place. And Percy Bysshe Shelley was an advocate for even vegetarianism, equality, fair wages, a non-stratified civilization where we're all one and equal. He was extraordinarily revolutionary and pioneering for a time that he lived, which was in the wake of the French Revolution and Napoleon, the dictator, basically in the conqueror energy. Kind of makes me think of certain politicians today. And he also was in that industrial revolution where there was a great deal of poverty going on around the early phases of manufacturing in England. So, okay, so we got a lot of cool stuff there. Now, the T-square, last thing on the mundane chart for the world, this T-square, I can do this, yay, has what we call a polarity point across the way. And I just want to say, that's kind of like how you heal the T-square, okay? So it can create healing when we look at the polarity points of a T-square. So the T-square polarity point to resolve the tension in this triangle that can create some greatness for the world is in the third house of the world chart. And what is the third house about? It is about your neighborhood, your local people, your friends that are local, your kin, your aunties, your uncles, and your siblings. We have to heal this stuff at that level. Whether it's the pandemic we're trying to heal by being attentive to how we are in our local neighborhood with our local people, or how we're trying, and our siblings and our aunties and our uncles potentially, or how we're trying to heal things like racial inequality, violence and unfair treatment by authorities to those who are people of color, how we need to understand that white privilege does exist, whether we like to know it, admit it or not. These things we heal at the third house level. Now, the third house is also writing, teaching, speaking, and communicating. So sharing our knowledge and our intellect is about this with the world. A lot of people put social media and stuff like that, blogs and, tweets and stuff in the third house. So think about it that way. We can heal it actually using some of those mechanisms. All right. Let's move away from the mundane and let's talk about the all signs. I always start with Aries because I'm just a traditionalist and I'm an Aries sun, so I'm prone to myself. All right, Aries. Now, I'm going to take a deep breath here again and remind everybody your ascendant sign is the best place to start. You can go sun and moon as well. If you want to look at sun or moon, if you're born at night and the sky is dark, and the sun is below the ascendant descendant, you might want to look at the moon sign. It's more important. If you're born during the daytime, your sun could be more influential. Alrighty. In the meantime, ascendant is the best. And don't forget, as I mentioned, check the description box below for all of my sales and special readings, including my new eclipse reading. All right, let's go. Aries, you guys are experiencing the eclipse actually in your 9th house. And that 9th house energy is about truth, wisdom, idealism. It's where your guides, mentors, and gurus may sit. And that 9th house energy is going to be pressured from a 12th house Mars in the house of your own self-undoing and some of your karma. So you Aries might want to look at the polarity point where you can resolve some of this tension between that 9th house eclipse, lunar eclipse, and Mars. Now, let me just say, an eclipse in the 9th house is just the beginning of a bunch of eclipses for the next year and a half through your 9th house. So you're definitely looking at changes to do with higher education, foreign lands, a knowledge, wisdom, teachings of gurus, idealism and philosophy, your dharma, the calling of your soul for what you're here for. Those are themes that are really prevalent, and the eclipses are trying to bring you in greater alignment with those themes over the next 9 months. Oh, sorry, 18 months. But this particular eclipse with the Mars squaring from your 12th house of past lives is going to be resolved if you lean into your 6th house, which is the house of your karmic service and repaying off your karmic debt. It's also a place of, looking at right livelihood, being in alignment with true work. What does work look like for you that works for you? And it's your health protocols so that you don't get sick. So your health basically, but in ways to improve your health. So Aries, by focusing on your right livelihood, your true service to the collective, and feeling like you can be of service, as well as taking care of your body, exercise and nutrition, you can resolve some of the tension that's likely to emerge in this eclipse. And this eclipse is in play until July 5th, when we have another eclipse lunar eclipse that will kind of knock this one out of prevalence. Let's move on. Taurus. So Taurus, you guys are experiencing the eclipse in that 8th house, which is a very profound place. It's a very deep place of rebirth. And so the moon is sitting in the 8th house, and there's something that's being called forth for you to rebirth something or to die to something and let go of something. It is a south node eclipse. So, what are you going to let go of? Maybe about your money, maybe about debts somebody owes you, maybe about like eliminating a credit card debt and just calling it off, like paying it off, or even declaring bankruptcy can work because you're letting go of something. And other people's money is the 8th house, spousal money, credit card debt, bank loans. It's also money you can make through investments. It's your 401k and all of that. It's money that doesn't really belong to you because you're not touching and holding it. It's not coming to you as a possession right now, right? Passive income royalties. So where, Taurus, do you need to let go, south node, something to do with money and debt and energy around that so you can birth something new in your life? Now that theme is ongoing for you over the next year and a half. The square from Mars comes from the 11th house of good spirit. It's a very positive place. It's even pennies from heaven. But Mars is making pressure on the 8th house, asking for something to be resolved. Mars in the 8th house is also, the 11th house is also pressure from allies and friendships that are larger than your local crew, social media, social networks, belongingness, tribes and associations that you belong to. Like, I belong to the Association of Astrologers, that kind of thing. I belong to a meditation group. Pressure coming from that Mars position. But I'm reminding you that Mars is the flow of inspiration on the Sabian symbol. So it could be some inspired way to alleviate energy of tension in the 8th house of other people's money. For some of you, if you're married and you're having tensions with spousal money, this could be a really intense placement right now, where this eclipse over the next month tries to relieve some of that tension. Alrighty, the kind of the opposite point of the polarity point of the T-square where Mars is sitting is going to be in your 5th house. Now that is the house of your children, the house of your inspiration and inspired projects and creativity, and the house of romance. Any of those areas can be a place of relief. It's a house of pleasure, fun, and enjoyment too. Like if you're not having any fun in life, I think I'm going to prescribe that you move toward fun in the next 30 days. Pleasure, sexuality, play. Your children can be an outlet for you to release some of the tension of that T-square. Maybe you don't have to do anything. Maybe one of your kids says, Mom, I've owed you some money for like 5 years, and suddenly deposits a chunk of money into your bank account. So look for the resolution of tension there. Gemini, you guys are having this eclipse in the marriage house. And by the way, I just talked about how eclipses through my marriage house in 2016 basically knocked a marriage out of the ring. So get ready, you Gemini ascendants, sun and moons, that potentially you're looking at disruption over the next year and a half of a primary love relationship. When we say marriage, I mean like I live with the person, I'm committed, it's a long-term connection. So there's just that. The tension this month ahead from the lunar eclipse is coming out of your 10th house of career and your reputation and your status in the world. And there's pressure to bear from that zone of the chart. Maybe there's tension about your husband wants you to get a job, you know, or update your game in your career, or you feel you should do that and your husband resists that, or your wife resists that, or your long-term partner resists that. If that tension is there, the resolution comes through, of course, as I said, Sabian symbols of the flow of inspiration and the seagull looking for opportunity. The polarity point that can help you resolve the tension there is to lean into your 4th house. That's your property, your home, your abode, your ancestral line. It is like literally where you live, you know? So it's also the house of deep mystery and things that are hidden from view. It's like the underworld and the underground of the chart. It's like, you know, you can dig for some real gold in them, there dark shadows. So there's that sort of psychological piece as well. So by anchoring in the 4th house, whether it's being at home with your family, tending to the home fires, doing something with real estate, you know, or land, or leaning into, real estate or land, or leaning into the energy of your ancestral line. Okay. There's something really good that could come from that, you know, particularly also looking deep under the surface of what patterns you may play out in your ancestral line that you don't need anymore. And you could break through those and do something different. But it could be very literal, like selling a house or improving a house or spending more time at home in the next 30 days until July 5th. That can help smooth out that T-square and bring you some opportunity and some flow of inspiration. Okay, let's go now to the Cancers, ascendants, and sun and moon. The sense of the intensity where this eclipse will be, and you'll be getting eclipses here for the next year and a half, is your 6th house. So you're doing that eclipse in your 6th house, 12th house axis over the next year and a half. So you Cancer ascendant, sun and moons, you're in for a very deep ride, right? You're looking at the house of karma and self-undoing and past lives, the 12th being activated over the next year and a half, but also this time more acutely the 6th house of your health protocols. It's a house of sickness and illness, but it's a house of wellness when we discover food and dietary styles and exercise patterns that help us heal and stay healthy. It is truly also a place of service to the world through the mechanism of right livelihood. And if you feel like you have something you want to offer the world and you're ready to do it, and it feels like it's in a true alignment and you're going to offer it as a service, and yes, it's work, you can make money at it. This is a direction that your soul's taking you over the next year and a half, you Cancer rising, sun, moon, and ascendant. The T-square. The tension in the T-square comes from the 9th house, and that's where Mars is sitting. And so this is a house of what you want to learn. Do you want to go back to school? Do you want to take greater education? Do you want to discover some kind of new, look at the way that works, some kind of new teacher, mentor, or guide? That's very 9th house. Could be a male as well, squaring, coming into your life to say, I've got some information, guidance for you. You want to learn? You want to study with me? Foreign trips and foreign lands, anything you do in a foreign country, not so likely given the tensions of COVID right now, but then learn something from a teacher who lives in a foreign country, but learn it online. That's possible. The kind of polarity healing point is the 3rd house. And so that's the house of your siblings and your aunts and uncles and your friends and family. You know, it's a place where you have education, and it's online often these days, short-term seminars, workshops, and there's a call in the next 30 days to find perhaps opportunity and a flow of inspiration through something you might learn or take a class with somebody online. The third house is also siblings, so you could have some really good breakthrough energy by attending to a connection with a sibling. Moving on to Leo. Leo, this is a fifth house eclipse. As I said, for most people, I'll mention for you again, this means that these eclipses are happening for 1.5 to 2 years through that part of your chart, which represents pregnancy, childbirth, conception, projects, inspiration, and your business enterprise, entrepreneurship, creativity. I think I said that, art, all the arts, performing especially. It's a house of luck. It's a house of good fortune. It's romance and romantic engagement and sexual pleasure. A lot of stuff in the basket of the fifth. So these are the eclipses changing things up. So if you want a baby and you haven't had one yet, and you know, whatever, it could incite a conception and pregnancy and a new baby. And if you're not hooked up with a romantic partner and you're single, it's a good time for a new romance over the next 1.5 years. Now, this eclipse that's happening is squared from Mars and Neptune. Don't forget Neptune's up there as well, in your 8th house. Now, the 8th house is money that doesn't belong to you. It's deep tantric sexuality. It's secrets and taboos, sex, death, and money. It's a kind of a rebirth and death energy as well. You might find that Mars square from the 8th house could activate something, because I'm looking at that 5th house, to do with a lucky break, a financial break, some opportunity for money, particularly that's not your own necessarily, you know, a windfall of some kind, or it could be money you earn, because the polarity point and the pressure relieving valve for the T-square is the 2nd house of your self-worth, self-possession, your own earnings, the way you make money and the way you are resourceful. So a little initiative there. Business partnerships is also 8th house, and spousal money. So just pay attention to those themes. There's a lot of energy around the money, and given the 5th house can be, you know, energy of speculative endeavors, like taking a risk, placing a bet, you know, that kind of thing. It might be an ideal time to place a bet or buy a lottery ticket. All right, moving forward. Virgo. You're going to anchor that eclipse and the eclipses of the next 1.5 years on the 4th house and 10th house axis. This particular eclipse is in the 4th house, your home, your real estate, your land, where you live, where do you want to live, your ancestral heritage. No doubt about it, you're going to move during the next 1.5 to 2 years. You're not going to be stay put. You're going to seriously change it up, whether you change your house, your country, your city, I don't know, but you're moving. Your nest is being uprooted for you. Now, that's a broader theme that will emerge. Get that eclipse reading that I have, and we can go into your chart and see where exactly that may and how that may play out. But the Virgo ascendant, sun and moon, particularly ascendant, you're looking at the energy of the square coming from Mars in the 7th house. And the 7th house is your primary and long-term love relationships, you know, marriage partners, can be business partnerships. And if you work one-on-one with people, it's your clients. But in the next 30 days, there's pressure from the energy of Mars in the 7th house, someone close to you, perhaps a long-term friendship or business partner or loved one, like a romantic or husbandy type vibe or wife-like vibe, can be pressuring you about location and home. And it may not be a bad thing. It may be like an opportunity, because don't forget, the T-square involves Mars on a flow of inspiration and the moon on the seagulls, which represent hovering, which represents opportunity. So don't necessarily take that pressure as a negative thing. Really feel into it. If you want to sell real estate because you own it, then the 7th house could be a buyer, because that's the house of other. So if you're looking to sell real estate, then this could be a buyer walking in the door, and then Mars could be negotiation, you know, conflict or discussions that are heated but can be resolved. The resolution of all tensions over those 30 days between this eclipse and the one on July 5th is coming from the polarity point or healing point in the first house of your chart. That's your identity. The more you're really true to who you are and really own the avatar of you, you know, the whole body mind complex. Like if this is a video game, your first house is your avatar. And so the more you can really lean into yourself and who you are, the more you will resolve this pressure from the house of other. So I'd say don't dismiss what other wants you to do around home and placement of living where you live, but also lean into who you really are to make decisions there. Moving forward, Libra. So Libra, oh my goodness, sun, moon, and ascendant, especially ascendant. This is the beginning of an eclipse cycle that is in your third house and your ninth house. So the house of your third house is siblings and short-term trips and travel, a domestic travel kind of thing. Education, I write, teach, and speak. It's really good if you do any online work, Libras. The eclipses are going to change how you do it or the content of what you do in that regard. So also your friends, your siblings, and your kind of like local buddies and your neighborhood. So there's that. And the eclipses will be going through that part of the chart for a year and a half. And therefore, you know, it's going to be important to pay attention to how the first wave of that happens, which is happening between now and roughly July the 5th. The energy and tension from Mars in the 5th house is coming from the house of, sixth house is coming from the part of the chart where you have your own karmic debt, your own sense of how you can create wellness in your life physically, health regimes and nutrition. It's how you can be of service to the world in the work you do. Mars pressuring from that house could be a disruption of your work. If you're not happy with your workplace and the way your work is running your life, if it doesn't feel good for you, if you're an employee and you don't like your job, you could very likely have a break with your work as a result of this eclipse, but it will be an opportunity. Don't forget, flow of inspiration and the seagulls, those two Sabian symbols are pointing to something good that can emerge from Mars, disruption, cutting, breaking away energy in the house of your workplace. The polarity point in healing comes from the 12th, surrender, let go, let God, past lives and karmic stuff playing out. The house of your self-undoing, if you so do, undo yourself. I would lean into my dreams at night. I would lean into my meditations. I would lean into my deeper knowledge of my eternal soul if this was my eclipse, because that will give you solace. Solitude is 12th house. More time alone, really good for you over the next 30 days in your own good company, in your own solace and solitude. Will be very healing during the 30 days ahead. Scorpio. Eclipses are going to start up over the next year and a half in your 2nd and 8th house. It's all about the money, honey. You're going to be looking at new ways to be rich or wealthier and more self-possessed and have greater self-esteem. You may change your dietary structures because the 2nd house is things we put in our mouth and things that come out of our throat. You may have a new voice or message coming to the world or for yourself, and you may choose a different thing, a way of eating and drinking and imbibing stuff. Those are big themes that the eclipses are going to bring out for you over the next year and a half, you Scorpio, sun, moon, and particularly ascendant people. Now, the energy of tension is 5th house energy from Mars during this eclipse. And don't forget, Neptune's in there as well. And on June the 13th, Neptune will be connecting with Mars. So that's a trigger point for some action on this tension from Mars in your 5th. 5th house is that which you want to give birth to, whether they're real children, your own children that exist now, ideas, projects. It is a house of business, enterprise, and entrepreneurship. And Mars is squaring from that house, creating a dynamic tension in your 2nd and 8th house where that T-square is. So it's a push and pull between being inspired and playful and creative and joyful and having fun, other 5th house features, and this kind of monetary part of the chart about other people's money and your money. If a child of yours, especially a male child, is having any challenges financially, that may also pressure you financially in the next 30 days, and you may feel that pressure acutely. Now, the relief valve or the healing point is coming from the polarity of the T-square in your 11th house, and that 11th house is friends and allies and memberships to which you can belong, the house of good spirit, It's also pennies from heaven. If there's a lot of financial tension there, a pressure valve could be a lucky break financially. But also move into the 11th house with a little help. You know that song? Get by with a little help from my friends. Yeah, get by with a little help from my friends. That's you. You need to lean into others to support you. And they don't have to be your friend from kindergarten. We're talking about even social friends on the internet can be really, really useful for you to relieve some of this tension. And you know, the 11th is your hopes, dreams, and wishes. So lean into your hopes, dreams, and wishes away from the tension of what is being brought to bear from that Mars in the 5th. Lean into your bigger dreams and see how that doesn't feel good to you. Sagittarius, this is going to happen in your first house. The lunar eclipse is there, and this is your identity. This is your avatar. This is all about you. And, you know, there's an eclipsing of your identity in a way for like 30 days. This lunar eclipse could make you not that boisterous, optimistic, faith-filled, exuberant, adventurous Sagittarius. Maybe you're going to feel like a little bit off your game with that eclipse, you know. And this is a journey of the next 18 months to 2 years where the eclipses are going through your 1st and 7th house. Now, heads up. Eclipses through the 1st and 7th can disrupt long-term business partnerships and relationships. And if you have clients you work with, the others are clients, your client base will dramatically change. So if you're married or like you're married, living with somebody, this is a chance for you to renew that terms of service, or it could over the year and a half dissolve some union. Now, if you're single, of course, it could start one. That's the other thing. You know, if you don't have anybody in your life, eclipses in the 1-7 often bring a divine complement and a partner of destiny. I love that stuff. Also, you're looking at the pressure from this T-square, Mars in the 4th house. Where are you going to be living? What home is your true home base? Which country, which city, which house, which real estate chunk of land do you want to reside in? Some of those questions are really pertinent in the next 30 days. And Mars is saying cut away or maybe break away from a home base that is not right for you. And you might find that that pressure from Mars is good because it could, like the seagull watching from the ship and the flow of inspiration, bring an inspired opportunity if you're alert. And the key to seeing that comes out of the polarity point, the 10th house. That's your high noon. That's your career place. That's where the world sees you. That's your God's plan for you. The 10th house, closest you get to heaven. So do you want to lean into that? Is there a career opportunity for you, Sagittarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendants, that while making your identity a little uncomfortable here, the moon's being eclipsed in your 1st house, and Mars is squaring from where you live, maybe you don't see yourself as capable or able to be successful in this, but you can. And so leaning into the high noon, God's plan for you, what do you really, really want to be when you grow up? 10th house energy, lean into that hopeful energy of the 10th house. Now, 10th house can be representative of a parental figure, maybe a father figure, even a mother figure sometimes. So lean into also guidance from the parental figures in your life during this 30 days ahead. Let them guide you. Listen to what they have to say. I don't know why we always, you know, think our parents don't know best. I think they do because I'm a mom. Alrighty. All right, next. Okay, I just shed my water because I'm talking a lot. I don't know if I have any left. A little dribble. Alrighty. All right, Capricorn. You guys are experiencing a 12th house eclipse this time. And believe me, the lunar eclipse, this is a cycle of 12 house, 6 house eclipses for the next year and a half. I just went through that. Okay. I had eclipses going through my 12th and my 6th. I found it very subtle. You don't often see as much circumstantial evidence of eclipses in 12 and 6. But for me, it was cleaning up a bunch of dietary regimes and health regimes, my 6th house. So it's going to be a theme for you Capricorns for sure. But also it's really this eclipse for 30 days ahead is in the house of your nighttime dreams, your past lives, your meditations, your reverie, your solace, your solitude, your self-undoing. You could experience a breakthrough energy coming in that area of the chart in the next 30 days by virtue of pressure from Mars in your 3rd house. Now, that's siblings, that's local friends in the neighborhood, that's online teaching and education. It may involve seminars and workshops. If this eclipse is happening and you want to get rid of a path of self-undoing, like I drink too much, I smoke too much, I'm addicted to Netflix, I'm depressed, you can break those patterns by virtue of third house activities or people. So siblings can help you out as well. Mars is trying to offer up an opportunity, but it may feel conflictual, right? It's still Mars and it's gritty square. It's a tension angle. So how do you feel into that and kind of relieve some of the tension so you can flow with it? You lean into the ninth house. So those guys, not the ninth house. Yeah, the ninth house, guides, mentors, teachers, your own spiritual philosophy, wisdom and idealism, what you believe in, your own connection to God. This is the house of God, can really help you through this particular 30-day lunar eclipse. Education, that's higher education, is ninth house, as well as foreign land. So leaning into a trip to a foreign land, if that's possible for you, a pilgrimage, or leaning into some form of higher education wisdom that could also be offsetting the tension. By higher education, I usually mean like colleges and universities, all right? All right, Aquarius, 11th. I'm an Aquarius rising, so I'm relating here. Aquarius ascendant, sun and moon. The attention of this eclipse that you're going to currently go through is an 11th house energy. Now, that's true for the next year and a half. So 11th house, 5th house axis is going to change your social circles, right? Especially given it's a south node eclipse. The kind of people that you normally associate with is going to change over the next, your social circles and membership alliances over the next year and a half. Now, this eclipse begins that process. And so there's a letting go of south node eclipse in the house of good spirit, but also those that benefit you, friends and allies and benefactors, and great gains from your career and your hopes, dreams, and wishes. Now, this is very curious for us Aquarius risings, because what we hope for and dream for and wish, we think we know, but we don't, because the eclipses over the next year and a half, they're in that part of the chart. They're going to massage that. They're going to change that. This is south node, letting go, releasing our hopes, dreams, and wishes, because something new and better is trying to emerge. And that's really cool. So it's not that we have to like let go of a true soul calling. We're just letting go of what we think is best for us. And a changing up of the guard of our social alliances, networks, and friends is probably a useful thing every now and then. So the Mars is coming into the square to this moon from the second house of self-possession, self-worth, what we eat and ingest and what we speak out in the world, and also from the part of the chart that represents our earnings and our money and our resourcefulness. Mars might say it's time to make money in a different way. Gritty tension is trying to stop eating that food, like me, the gluten that I keep cheating on. And there's pressure to bear there. The gift is that the releasing of the tension comes from the 8th house. And that's money that we get through joint alliances, spousal money, partners' money, inheritances. It's deep occult arcane wisdom and knowledge as well, and things that are, magical and secretive and cool. You might consider the 8th house as well, you Aquarius risings during this eclipse, because it's the solace point and the healing point. If you lean into the 8th house, maybe you lean into trusting monetary resources that you don't kick up, you don't work really hard to get. I'm doing a lot of readings right now because I have my Venus sale on, and I've got my year ahead special down below, way super cheapy stuff. And I love my clients, but I've been doing a lot of work. I've been working hard. I've been seeing, like, I don't know, I'm losing count. I mean, I'm just trying to guess. I probably have seen about 200 clients in the last 30 days. And so you may, us Aquarius ascendants, want to relax a bit and move into monetary energy from the 8th house. So joint resources, other people's money, letting that show up, tax rebates, that would be nice, bank loans, grants and stipends, other forms of money that come to you. And well, it is a windfall house that the eclipse is happening, and it's called the pennies from heaven house. And given that the 8th house is the anti-polarity point from Mars, that tension from Mars, a sudden windfall, why not? So Aquarius risings, why not play the lottery ticket during the 30 days ahead? So why not? You never know. I'm going to go for the sudden windfall. I'm going to do that. I would lean into the 8th house and get a chunk of money that I didn't work hard for. Okay, lastly, but never leastly, of course, is the Pisces of the world. And the Pisces ascendant sun and moon, particularly ascendant. This is like a 10th house activation. Now, I'm so excited for you guys. My sister who does blindfaithreadings.com, check her link in my subject box below. She's a genius psychic astrologer, a psychic tarot reader using the LeNormand system. So link below for her. I'll give her a plug here. She's got this Pisces 10th house thing, and she's going to kick it up a notch in her career over the next year and a half because the eclipses are moving through the Pisces ascendant people and sun moon in the 10th house of your career and your high noon and God's plan for you, right? Where you touch the gates at the tip of heaven. You're reaching for heaven here. And so I would say that this eclipse, lunar eclipse, which is imbued with seagulls watching, therefore, you know, wait for the opportunity and the flow of inspiration where the Sabian symbol is with Mars. The energies here are through gritty tension of Mars, there's going to be an career opportunity in the next 30 days. Pay attention. Now, Mars is coming out of the first house of your identity. So you guys have to really understand that you may not feel good about the opportunity just by virtue of maybe you don't think you're good enough for it. Maybe you're nervous. Maybe you're afraid because it's Mars, you know, Neptune energy squaring that eclipse in the 10th. Yet there's a flow of inspiration in their first house. So you being you being your avatar, you being your personality, letting it shine, showing up as your Piscean self can be a part of how that next 30 days plays out with opportunities in your career. Now, the 7th house is the healing point of the T-square. So leaning into your marriage partner, leaning into your significant other, leaning into a business partnership, leaning into your clients, if you see clients, can be a real place of peace and healing around the tension of the next 30 days. Yeah, and really maybe just ask for that help from your partner. If you have a primary love partner in your life, say, I'm a little stressed about this opportunity in my career. I don't feel I'm up for it necessarily. I'm not maybe good enough, or I'm not something enough because of the first house activation. So let your partner or your client show you that you are. Lean into them, and business partnerships as well. Let your business partner help you and show you the way. Alrighty, that's it. Okay, guys, we're done. That was quite long. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember that you can like, subscribe, and all of that, and hit the bell for notifications, and find out more about what I'm doing by being in touch with me. I will also remind you again, there's an eclipse special reading on now, and it's down below. Click the link for more. It'll talk about the next year and a half to 2 years of your life. You know, it's worth knowing. What are the eclipses trying to change for you? I still have my year ahead special. It does cover a little bit of the eclipse stuff in it, just up to the end of this year. And but it's still a useful reading. It talks about the retrograde Mars and the Jupiter and the Venus and everybody and all the cast of characters. I am a Hellenistic astrologer. I do not just look at transits. I look at lots of Time Lord systems for you in the year ahead. And that's on sale for $135, which is nuts. And I'm extending it at least for a couple more weeks. And the Venus special is there as well. All right, check it out. Love you guys. Take care. See you soon. Mwah.